Turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro Electro Tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Hello there, once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electro Tech, and I just wanted to introduce this final video on the Pioneer SX1010, a little series I started some time back, and the footage for this video got set on the back burner. Time just got away from me. I've been very busy in the shop. What else is new, right? And I finally had some time to sit down the other day and sort through everything, stitch everything together, edit everything, which is why I'm introducing this video, because it's a little bit late, but better late than never, I suppose. Also, I want to mention too, it's not a hands-on how-to step-by-step video, instructional, but rather something to vibe into. I often bring it up that I provide this video footage as update material for the various customers that I provide service to, and something for their record as well. For those of you that like to follow along, I'm sure there's information that will prove useful, helpful, whatever. But otherwise, let's go ahead and get to the video. This is the Pioneer SX1010 that I've been doing a few videos on. The initial complaint was a right channel issue. I'll get into that briefly. I'm not going to rehash the whole thing because I cover that in some of the previous videos. But I'm just letting let me get a little more light on this. I'm just letting the customer know the phase that I'm in right now. I have been working on this in phases. I can't work on it all in one pop, not with my schedule being what it is. So I got the green light to go ahead and perform the servicing that needs to be done for the most part, which you can see here. I got the control boards all pulled out, the switch boards here. So all these boards are all pulled out, ready for a multi-flush cleaning, and that just consists of going through and injecting cleaner, flushing out multiple times while I'm exercising the various controls, whether it be push button switches, these toggle type switches, the potentiometers. But go through, they all need to be exercised very thoroughly while I'm flushing them out and working them over again, with the goal of loosening up any accumulation such as dust and debris that's worked its way in to some of these controls that are a little bit more open to the environment. And but regardless of, sometimes just the contacts within the switches and pots get a bit tarnished and oxidized and need to be kind of polished up by, with the aid of the cleaning solvent, contact cleaner, exercising of the controls, and just carving out as clean of a path between the contacts as possible, or the contact and the resistive track in the case of pots. Just trying to get these all cleaned up and flushed out, get gunk loosened up and all that. And then after that's all done, you go in and reintroduce the appropriate lubricant that's applicable to the control. So that's the stage I'm in right now. I'm going to be going in and doing that. That was the secondary complaint that the customer told me about, was that these push button switches were all very sticky. And in fact they were. I witnessed that as I was doing the function testing initially. They are very sticky. They get kind of stuck, don't pop all the way out when you're pressing them and all that. So I'm going to start there. These were tucked up in there anyway, so I got all the other boards out of the way, and I'm going to give these the attention they need, each individual switch, each individual control. That's why it's time consuming when you're really devoting the time and doing it right and doing a thorough job. It's just the time it takes to go through all these controls and do that. I'll zoom in a little bit here, but I'm not going to get into too much detail. But you could see behind the board here, if I just kind of scoot this, you see the power supply board there. That's the one that gets really toasty. It's pretty evident that the caps there are subjected to quite a bit of heat. Some of the labels on the caps were retracting or shrinking, whatever, and the board is really discolored. And I'm sure that on account of the heat, probably when I go in there and start checking the resistor values and some of the component values, I'll find that some of them are out of tolerance, no doubt. Whatever's out of tolerance I will replace, of course. and just try to give that board a clean bill of health. I can only spend so much time in here, but I'm going to give it my best. Mainly what I'm focusing on again is that power supply board, all these controls, and of course topside the redoing the amplifier boards. Okay, and I talked about that already. Again, I'll just say it really quick that we had that right channel issue, which was, again, the primary customer complaint that the channel was getting a bit distorted and intermittent. And we witnessed that when we were looking at that waveform on the oscilloscope on the right channel. That waveform was kind of collapsing, getting distorted, then it would drop out. And then, of course, when the time came for me to start digging in and sussing out that right channel board there, you know, once I pulled it out, pulling it out meaning I manipulated it, moved wires and all that, the problem completely went away and has not been back since. That's why I attribute it to a connection issue. It just makes sense. And I haven't been able to get it to, you know, come back again, no matter what I do. You know, I've tried everything, just about anyways, you know, heat, cold, moving the wires, flexing the board, just trying to recreate the problem, testing it under load, under heavy load, testing it with no load, and it's just pretty much the same. So unless the problem was on account of a transistor and it just decided, or whatever component, and decided to go completely dormant, I have no way of knowing. That's why I have to just chalk it up to a connection issue. And like I said, you know, there's questionable solder joints on the back of the right channel amp board. I would imagine when I pull the other amp board as well, I'll probably notice some connections that are suspect. So I'm going to go through while I redo these boards here and reflow all the solder joints. Again, check component values, even components that I'm not, you know, removing, of course. But I do agree that, you know, these boards are populated with components that are known to be problematic, such as the 2SA 726s and 2SC 1451s that I've already mentioned. And there's others as well. Plus, you know, we've got some of those blue Sanyo caps that are known to be problematic. So I'm in full agreement that these boards needed to be redone. But I don't think the initial problem was on account of a transistor. So back to this though, I'm going to start getting into this. I'm going to do a little bit of servicing. I'll probably roll a little bit of footage here as I go through and clean some of these out. So I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so I'm back working on these switches. I have this unit propped up on some blocks here so that I could just easily access the underbelly of this as I have these switches hanging here. I'm trying to make the best use of time here because, you know, budget is limited. I've got to go in here and just hit all this stuff as, you know, thoroughly as I can. And that's why this is the best way for me to get in here with things in place. And you can maybe see here that I'm going in through the backs of these metal bodied switches. These differ from the plastic bodied switches of the same style that you see in a lot of receivers in that there is access around the backs of these switches, enough where I can inject some contact cleaner down in there, you know, kind of flush it pretty good. And also there's a few little holes that I'm able to get my you know, hooked applicator into and really blast. And you got to kind of, you know, read the control a little bit as you're injecting cleaner. You can tell obviously if the cavity of a switch is filling up with contact cleaner as it starts spilling out of the different holes, spilling out of the shaft area. You can tell it's filling up and it's, you know, you're flushing out the switch or the control, whatever, pretty good. If you meet resistance when you put your applicator in there, you're going to know it because there'll be back pressure. It'll shoot back at you, and you're probably not getting as much contact cleaner flooding through the switch or the control as you would like to do a good job in flushing it out. Because remember, this is a multi-flush cleaning, and it's a multi-flush cleaning for a reason, because we're really trying to flush out anything that's causing problems in there. In this case, Somebody went in here and was using a lubricant that they should not have used. I found some remnants of a greasy substance, almost like a light grease, on some of the shafts here and on the bodies of some of these switches as I was cleaning it out. I've already cleaned them up pretty good. I should have perhaps left some of that on here so I could show you. Well, actually, you know what? I don't know. You might be able to see maybe on this. You see that white stuff on the tip there? So I noticed that on the shafts, and again, kind of oozing out of some of the holes here. This stuff really has become sort of coagulated and semi-greasy, but at the same time kind of flaky and drying out and kind of breaking up in clumps. So not a good idea. Whatever was used was the wrong stuff, and it really bogged down the switches, and that's what I've been contending with. I've already flushed these out probably a half a dozen times, and have really been going through and working all these controls over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so that's what I do. I inject, and then I go through and just sit here. Usually I have music on in the background because it gets so boring as you're sitting here, because you really do have to exercise these switches over and over again and turn pots over and over again. So I'll turn on some music and I'll sit here and create my own little rhythm, and just kind of as I'm sitting here going completely crazy and all that stuff. But I've had to do that over and over again because, man, this stuff was really bad, and that's why these things were sticking so bad. And these three were the worst out of all of them. And this one out of the three was the worst. And it's doing a little bit better, but I noticed there almost still feels like there's a little bit of a film in there. And every once in a while, this kind of retracts a little bit slower. So I'm going to flush it again. I'm still going to flush these a few more times and work them. I think that if I had to take any one of them apart, it would probably be this one here if I had to. And I'm going to try to avoid that like the plague, because I don't like messing around with these switches too much. They get a little bit finicky. But I think I could probably just keep working them with contact cleaner. So the verdict is out on this one, but I'm pretty sure I won't have to do it. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid it. So, it's working, it's working pretty good. Just demonstrate to the customer again. So you can see it's doing okay, but it just every once in a while, for some reason, it just, there's still a film in there a little bit, and it'll kind of misbehave a little bit. But probably by the time I hit it, with another round, it'll probably be good, because that's really the last thing I want to do is go into these switches, any of them. So otherwise, they all seem to be working pretty good now, a heck of a lot better than they were. So you really got to be careful what's used, especially on switches like this that are a little bit more fine mechanically. It's not like these switches here, you can get away with a little bit more if you did use something that was a little bit more thick, a little bit more viscous, and that degraded badly over time. Mechanically speaking, these switches, they're kind of big brute force switches, big clunky switches that can tolerate that a little bit better. That's not to say that the contacts wouldn't, get gummed up and start having some issues there, electrically speaking, as far as contacts are concerned, if you use a lubricant that's non-beneficial. But mechanically, you could see that these bigger switches can tolerate a bit more, but these little switches here that are a little bit more fine mechanically, you can't bog them down with thicker lubricant that gets more viscous, that when it gets starts degrading, it gets all gummy. And you saw, hopefully you saw a little bit of that stuff I had on the tip of that pick that was almost like, I don't know, real kind of greasy but flaky at the same time, kind of coagulated looking. Yeah, you don't want that kind of stuff in these switches. So that's what I am contending with. That's where I am, and this really bogged me down a lot longer than I thought because, you know, again, I still have to go in here and do more. So after like a half a dozen flushings already and working them, I'm just barely getting them to the point where they're working reliably. So there you go. So that was a little bit of a discourse, but I think that's good for people to know, to be careful of what you do with these switches and controls. You can't just put anything in there. You can't break out your body butter.
Oh no.
And start slathering it on these switches and calling it good. So let me go ahead and get these done and then move on. I'm going to wrap up the power supply here, get the electrolytics pulled. While I have them pulled, I'm going to clean the board, excuse me, tolerance check the remaining components. If there's anything out of tolerance, then, you know, I will replace whatever out of tolerance part needs to be replaced. Freshen up the heatsink compound on these transistors on this heatsink here. And you know, I'll of course check the soldering on the back of the board in a little bit more detail. Just clean up the board, do what has to be done to get it freshened up and give it a clean bill of health. So so far so good. I finished up the amp boards. So these boards are cleaned up nicely between solder joints and, you know, checking the wiring and everything. Obviously, as you can see, they're mounted back in. After I got them mounted back in, I piped in a signal, monitored the channels on the scope for quite a while. Once again, everything is looking really good. Back around to this side, again, when I get all these caps pulled, I think what I'm going to do is take some measurements on the ones that look the worst physically, as far as the ones with the shrunken labels that obviously shrunk from exposure to higher heat, and see what kind of readings we get. I'm not going to go into a deep analysis and start really getting into deep testing, and I don't want to, you know, geek out too much on them. I just want to you know, just check the ESR and the capacitance and all that. I think that's going to be enough anyways, especially these ones that are, you know, obviously showing signs of heat stress, that have been cooking for a while, for the last 40 something years. You'll see what kind of readings we get on a few of them. I'm not going to spend too much time on stuff that I'm just planning on pulling out anyways and replacing. Okay, so before I move on, I wanted to tune back into the power supply board that I'm working on. You can see I have all the electrolytics removed, so the board's a little bit more naked. You can see things a little bit better. And I just wanted to point out to you the contrast between the heat stressed area, the discolored area of the board, versus the normal color of the board. Of course, as you can see, a big contrast there. So this board over time was getting really heated. So although the power supply overall was functioning, or is functioning, this power supply board here has one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel for sure. And it's a good thing that I got in here and started performing the work on it at this point of its life, because I did find some faulty components on the board here. Let me go ahead again. You know, this didn't happen overnight. The only work that I could see that was done on this board was one of the pass transistors was replaced, but other than that, all components appear to be original.
That's one thing I always do, is kind of examine the board to get a feel for things as to how many people might have been in here messing around and what type of work was done if somebody was in there. But everything looks original here. Now let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit here on this area here. So aside from getting the electrolytics out, as I said I was going to do, I went through, of course, and started tolerance checking the remaining components. Resistors, diodes, transistors. I have some things pulled out of circuit, and you can see that, like, these resistors here, okay, here, here, and here, I lifted out of circuit because I was receiving anomalous readings, which is common. You will receive anomalous readings when you're going through and spot checking components in circuit because of, parallel resistances and other components that might be read across, so forth. So once I lifted them out of circuit, they were looking good within tolerance. These TO92 package transistors, I didn't yank them from circuit, but I was going through spot checking their junctions, and we have junction function. In other words, we have the normal diode drops, if you will, across the junctions of these TO92s, and that's looking good. This little diode down here, I was getting some funky readings once I pulled it from circuit and checked it. Yeah, everything was looking good there. So that's cool. Everything's looking good here. All the remaining components are reading within tolerance, their tolerances. And you can see down here I have these transistors that I pulled from circuit that I was getting anomalous readings on. And these two are faulty here. And I've checked them actually a couple times because the readings I was getting were kind of vacillating, jumping between, toggling between showing unknown component, no detection, because I was getting no readings across any of the junctions, and indicating that they're just completely open. The component tester was unable to detect it. And I verified that with my DMM, and I was getting mixed readings. Sometimes when I would move the leads around a little bit, I would still get, an indication of a faulty component. Like one time I think on this one time I was getting a collector to emitter short, and then I would test again, move the leads around, and I was getting just nothing open across all junctions. And I was using, this component tester here initially and just going through them. And even though I was using this, I wanted to just verify, when I got some readings indicating that nothing was detected, just no component detected, I was spot checking them with my, with my DMM here in diode check mode, and, just to be sure. And same thing, I was getting no readings across the junctions. But let me go ahead, just for the sake of the customer, and just hook up the component tester to this transistor here and see what kind of reading we get. Because like I said, when I was moving around the leads a little bit, I would get some different readings. I mean, it's definitely faulty for sure, but you'll get different readings based on whether or not you wiggle around the leads a little bit and kind of play with them. Most of the time, like I said, I was just getting a reading that no component was detected because the junctions were just opened. So let me get that glare out of there. Yeah, no component detected. If I move the leads around a little bit, which I'm not going to do right now, but sometimes I'll get something like just unknown or faulty component. So it'll kind of vary a little bit. And I was getting some, let me just turn it on again. I'll let it, yeah, no component detected. Okay, so that's what I'm getting here on this one. Let me check this other transistor here that's also faulty. So I know watching me hook up leads and all that isn't really entertaining, but it's okay. Usually I'll just, usually I try to just edit that kind of stuff out and just show just the hookup and the tester, and that's it. Okay, get that glare out of there. And no component detected. Okay, so there you go. And that's ultimately what I wanted to kind of show the customer as well. This transistor here was one that was replaced, okay? And it's reading fine, like I said, it's reading fine across all the junctions, reading like it should. This one over here, I was getting some anomalous readings on when it was in circuit, but out of circuit, it's testing just fine. Even the gain characteristics, you know, on both of them and whatnot, absolutely fine. Based on data sheet specs and all that on these transistors, they're doing fine. Here's the caps. I kind of have them separated. These are the ones that were reading within reason as far as capacitance and ESR are concerned. Leakage is another animal. I didn't leakage test them, nor am I going to. I just want to do a quick capacitance and ESR check, as I already mentioned. These are the ones that are kaput. And what I mean is these two here I can't even test, because when I was taking them off the board, a couple of these leads just fell out. In fact, the bottom plug on this one here just came loose, and the leads fell out of these two because they were just so deteriorated. And yeah, they were leaking a bit onto the board, just a little bit. Not too bad, but they were just kind of corroded, you know, the leads and all that. So there you go. But these four here is what I will test, and we'll just use the LCR meter here and just clip on. So this one here is a 470 80 volt cap, 470 80 volt cap. This one I believe is what, 50 volts at, yeah, 50 volt, 47 mics. And then this one here is 100 mics at 50 volts. So I'll just kind of zoom you into the screen there. And you know what caps we're dealing with. And the caps that I showed you, those are the good and the bad, were all the ones that were pulled from the power supply board there. So anyways, let's start with these two 80 volt 470 mic caps, okay? 3 picofarads, so I would say that's bad. Oh, excuse me, the next one, they weren't both 470 mic at 80 volts. The next one is a 35 volt at 1000 mics. They physically look the same, so yeah, you can see that one's kaput as well. 2 picofarad at too high to read. Outside the limits there. So, and then this next one is the 50 volt at 47 mics. So yeah, 8, 9, whatever pico, and just the ESR is way out there. And the last one that I could test is our 50 volt at 100 mics. And this is a 100 mic cap at 80 mics, but the ESR is high for this cap. So yeah, I mean 9.7 ohms is too high. So, and again, I didn't even test leakage, so there you go. So once again, as you can see, all these caps here are pretty much done. Some were not even close. They were down in the picos, and ESR off the charts and whatnot. But no surprise. I mean, the board needed work really bad, and it's getting done. So when I come back, I'll have this thing pretty much put together, and as I already said, we'll go into the rest of the testing. So I'll be back in just a bit. Okay, so you can see the new transistors back on board, all three here. Fresh heatsink compound, which was non-existent on the other one, so there you go. Okay, and here's the back side of the power supply board. Most of the solder joints had to be redone. They were all in pretty rough shape because of the heat, especially in the area where most of the heat was concentrated, but there was bad solder joints, rough looking solder joints all over. So like I said, I redid just about everything, so I wanted to kind of show the back of the board, and I cleaned everything up. So let me flip around to the other side. Okay, and here's the top side of the power supply board, of course. All the caps installed, everything reinstalled. So let's go ahead and get to some testing. Okay, and here we are all wrapped up. The only thing I'm doing now is finalizing the biasing. I have the biasing set at 25 millivolts-ish. There and here, okay? Things are bouncing around a little bit, but holding stable otherwise, and not a single hiccup from this unit. The only other thing I'm going to do is get a signal piped in, monitor the channels again for a little while. We'll see what this thing is putting out, and then I'm going to conclude with some audio testing on camera. As I mentioned before, yeah, it is kind of pointless on YouTube to be able to gauge the sound quality, but for the sake of you guys just hearing some music coming out of this, as well as the customer, I'm doing it for that reason. And then I'm just going to wrap up the cosmetics, get the front panel back on, the knobs, and there you go. Everything's been cleaned up otherwise. The dial face here and the internals and all that good stuff. So when I come back again, I'll have a signal in it and we'll go from there. Okay, and here we are with 1 kilohertz tone piped in, and let's go over here to the scope. And I'm just going to start by, monitoring the channels for a bit here. I've already been doing so, and everything is looking good. The channels are symmetrical with one another, and yeah, everything's holding up well. So there you go. So I'm going to monitor things for a bit. Once again, make sure everything remains stable, and then we'll see what this unit's putting out. "112 watts into 8 ohms. Not bad for a 100 watt amp that hasn't been restored. So she's doing good. Okay, here we are sweeping through the audio spectrum. Everything's looking pretty good. Very, very, very little, if any, deviation in amplitude. So we're looking pretty darn linear. I have both channels stacked on top of each other. Things are looking fairly symmetrical there. Not bad. Yeah, considering that I did not perform a full restoration on this, I just serviced what had to be serviced, doing pretty darn good. So let's go ahead and move into some audio testing. Here's the Pioneer SX1010 all put back together and powered up, ready for some audio testing, starting with the tuner. And of course, because you're not standing here in the shop, this audio demo is a poor representation of what you would be hearing if you were standing here in the shop. So, that understood, I'm going to, again, start with the FM tuner, and I'm not going to camp out on a station too long if they're playing copywritten music at the time. I'm going to try to keep that stuff to a minimum. So let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, so we're obviously positioned across from one of the benches between 2 test speakers. One there, and the other one up in that corner there, as you can see. So what I'm trying to do, because I'm not properly mic'd to reproduce better sound quality over the internet, so I figured I'd position the camera between the speakers and see how it comes out. I'm sure it's not going to be much better, but across from the bench here I have a seating area for customers. When they come in, they can kind of sit here between those test speakers and get a better vibe for things. So anyways, the camera's positioned over here in in the seating area, okay, this area here. And this is typically where I have the customer sit when they come in so that they can be across from the speakers, positioned kind of in the center there, and get a better listening experience during audio testing. I doubt if it's going to do any good in this case because of the mic that's built into the camera, but again, we'll give it a try. Okay, so there you have it. I don't know if that improved the audio quality a little bit by backing off the camera to the seating area over there and, you know, centering it between the speakers. Maybe so. But anyways, that's really not my priority right now. Maybe down the road I'll try to improve the YouTube audio experience by, number one, getting an external mic for this camera because I don't have one. We're just running off of the built-in mic. And that's that. Oh, and otherwise I cut out the part of the video where I'm going old school and dancing it up and pop locking and all that stuff. And, you know, got to do that sometimes. I'm in the shop alone. Some of these tunes are just too good to just sit still and do nothing. So anyways, but I spared you guys that. I cut it out. And other than that, as I always say, guys, peace, love, music, and the vintage audio that brings it to your ears. Till next time, y'all take care.
This is a poor man's shoe production.